Carlos from San Juan, Puerto Rico. I was watching one of JD's videos and he said that AEW has 5 to 10 years before they go under. On one hand, I do believe that they might go under in that time span because of their creative decisions, but on the other hand, TNA is still a thing, and they made worse creative decisions than AEW. Do you think AEW will fold in that time span? And if not, how long do you give them before they go under? What a question. No, they are not going out of business in 5 to 10 years. You know, there's this narrative out there that because their numbers are dwindling and they can't fill big buildings anymore for their weekly TV, that the end is near. Or if they lose their TV, right, if Warner Brothers Discovery gets sold, that's the end of AEW. And nobody can say with 100% certainty what's going to happen 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But do I think that AEW will cease to exist? Absolutely not. Do I think they will still be on TV somewhere? Yes, I do. I don't have a time span for them to die. I don't think like that. You know, TNA is actually a great example. I thought for sure, and maybe I don't do it anymore because TNA proved me wrong, because years and years ago, I thought for sure that just because of the changes in ownership, you know, it was being passed around so often and they had a lot of issues, but the changes in ownership and everything, that it was just a matter of time before TNA was gone, right? And yet they persevere. Not only do they persevere, they're thriving more now than they have in years. And they're about to announce a new media rights deal soon. And the people who own TNA were not nearly as big wrestling fans as Tony Khan is, right? And he's got a lot of money to burn. I don't think he's going to let AEW go under. AEW going under, by the way, would be terrible for wrestling. Okay, they have some serious problems that need to be addressed, and their business may dip, right? There may come a point where they have to do some very serious downsizing of the roster, which I know Tony has tried to avoid doing. But they will exist in some form. They will continue to be a thorn in WWE's side, and that's good. We need someone to be a pain in their ass. They're not going anywhere. And anyone saying otherwise is being overly dramatic. Curtis in Waterloo, Ontario, when Andrade came back, I believe it was Meltzer who reported that part of the reason Tony Khan brought him back was that he was looking for another Hispanic star to help bring in the Mexican audience and establish more of a presence in Mexico. This got me thinking. For years, there have been reports of North American promotions looking for that next big Hispanic star to help them establish more of a foothold in Mexico and other South American countries. For a long time, Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio were those two guys. WWE tried to bring in guys like Del Rio, Sin Cara, and to a modern extent, Penta and Rey Fenix. Damian Priest could possibly fall in that category. Even in AEW, they have a good contingent of lucha wrestlers, but it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like they have that guy. My question is, post 2007, who would you say is the biggest or most successful Hispanic star in a North American promotion, not named Rey Mysterio? I don't know why AEW needs Andrade for that when they've got Bandito right there. Like, Bandito was one half of their tag team champions. He's the Ring of Honor world champion. He's charismatic as fuck, and he's great. He's got all the tools. WWE, they've been searching for that next big Hispanic star for, it feels like a couple of decades now. And there was even talk that Santos Escobar could be that guy when they first brought him in. And maybe he'll even be back on TV by the time some of you listen to this. I think it would have to be Alberto Del Rio. Maybe Damian Priest if we're talking Hispanic stars, not Mexican. You know, Priest was a world heavyweight champion. He was part of the top heel faction on Raw for a couple of years. But Del Rio won a Royal Rumble. He won Money in the Bank. He won the World Championship. He won the WWE Championship multiple times. He beat John Cena to win the United States Championship. Then he had that run in TNA and he won the Impact World Championship, and even his recent stint in AAA, he was very over. And he was their top champion until the WWE acquisition. People are booing Vikingo now because they booked Vikingo to beat Del Rio. So, I mean, in terms of the success that he achieved, it has to be Alberto. By the way, on the subject of Damian Priest, I'm glad you brought this up. On the subject of Damian Priest, I have to ask this question. He walked out, I didn't mention this in my review on Friday, but he walked out on SmackDown wearing a new shirt. It's Wepa time. Okay, now I'm going to need all my Puerto Rican friends to chime in on this. I know wepa is definitely a thing that people say. A couple of Puerto Rican girls I used to hang out with would say it a lot. But is there any Puerto Rican alive that actually says it's wepa time? That just sounds very cringy to me. It sounds like WWE co-opted it just to sell t-shirts and didn't actually stop to think, like, do people actually say this? I just think it makes them look less cool, you know, when they try to force shit like this. It's wepa time. Like, it'd be like Triple H coming out wearing a shirt that says it's game time. Like, except Triple H would never allow the merch department to sell such a thing. He would have that person fired instantly if they tried to. But I need to hear from people. Like, is that actually something that people will verbally say? I've never heard that before. But then I see him coming out in a t-shirt wearing it, and I say, is this supposed to make him look cool? Because it doesn't. I think it has the opposite effect. Brianna from Jackson, Mississippi. I recently watched your Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect review from your top 10 greatest SummerSlam matches playlist on YouTube. And you mentioned that Bret came very close to leaving WWF, she says, in 1992 and signing with the WCW. Do you know why Bret wanted to leave? And hypothetically, how would you have booked Bret in WCW in 1992? Well, if the plan had gone through, Bret would have come in still as the Intercontinental Champion. It would have been WCW's way to get back at WWE for having Ric Flair show up the previous year with the big gold belt. Bret would have been used as a pawn, essentially. But I think debuting him as like a U.S. title level star would have made sense, right? He wasn't there yet as any sort of main event draw, but WCW back then in like 92, 93, they had a ton of great talent that he could have worked with. I mean, Sting and Vader, I mean, they were main eventers, but like he still could have worked with those guys. But you got Rick Rude was there, and Ricky Steamboat, and Steve Austin, and Brian Pillman. You know, Bret should have been mixing it up with those guys to help level him up and get him to where they were. Because he was still trying to shed the skin of being just a tag team wrestler at that point. But the reason he wanted to leave, it really was just him trying to cover his bases. Vince would pitch ideas for him that would constantly change. And yeah, he talked about this in his book, and his biggest fear was ending up like a Tito Santana and other guy. And look, Tito had a great career for himself, and Tito was super talented, but Tito was never, like, he got to a certain level and that was it. That was where it ended for him. And that was his fear. He didn't want to end up like a Tito Santana or some of these other guys that had been the Intercontinental Champion who, after their run was over, just got shuffled off to a mid-card role for life. You know, he didn't want that. He knew he could be more than that. So he had discussions with them, and it ended up not going anywhere. He also didn't realize his contract had rolled over, I think through September of that year. So he was stuck anyway. But, you know, as with everything, it comes down to two things: the cash and the creative. And I think Brian Pillman was actually the conduit between him and WCW, and he told Bret he could get more money if he came over and worked for the other side. So that's what got the ball rolling. It was money as much as anything. But the creative was an important part of it too. But it worked out for the better. I don't think WCW would have known what to do with him after that initial debut. Like, he definitely would not have ascended as high as he did working in WCW, especially not after Bischoff brought Hogan in 2 years later. There was no way that Bret was ever going to get to the level there that he got to in WWE.